Hello. Well, Robert, I wanted to ask, how did you start thinking about the nanobes and how did you wind up at the final result?
So, the obvious elephant in the room was microscopic, right? Well, the elephant wasn't, but the nanobes are. Um, so the first thing I did was just look up at a whole bunch of reference photos of like what does microscopic stuff look like. I looked at like electron tunneling microscope images and like macro shots of like tardigrades and like ticks and all kinds of little tiny itty gross creatures. Just to get a feel of like what that scale of thing looks like. Um, which isn't to say that I actually tried to emulate that look so much. I just wanted to fill my brain with what do little tiny things look like in their own space, you know? So from there, uh, I just started drawing whatever popped into my head, which is how we do concept art. And if I can share my screen, I have a Clip Studio open here. I have these on layers. So the first thing I did was just real quick, like mashing a pencil against the screen, just trying to get concepts onto a surface before I forget about them. Um, so here's some like electron microscope guys, all these little kind of particle-y looking things. Um, some real basic nanobot look like guys. This guy was literally just the idea of a spider and one of those little twirly beanie hats that kids I don't think ever really wore is in living memory. Um, and a lot of these concepts did make it into the actual alien design. Obviously, none of these are the one we ended up with, but the idea of them being on a cell and you seeing the cell in the background, and this guy should look kind of familiar. He's definitely like a prototype of our um, downlooker, the Tech Nanobe, and so obviously started. I remember this is actually a point of some confusion because I started thinking, okay, how can I make good nanobots? And the thing I first arrived at was actually the concept of gray goo, which, for those uninitiated, is the idea that nanobots that are self-replicating will eventually turn the entire universe or the world or whatever scope of thing into just one big mass of nanobots. And it'll look from a macroscopic perspective like just gray goop. So, starting from that, um, I refined some of these a little bit. So here's our gray goo right there. And then I also drew just some kind of fun nanobot shapes. I actually looked up some real pictures of nanobots that people have actually designed. I was like, okay, how do these things really work? Which is where I got some of the shapes from for these things. But very, very quickly, I started moving toward more fantastical stuff, like the electron microscope looks back at you. Um, or these are supposed to be, this is a concept I played with very briefly, which is the actual wave function of these like particles is the emotion of the nanobe. So these were all supposed to be the tech nanobes. And I even drew a little bit of gray goo here.
Hmm.
And then for the bio nanobes, I thought I'd go in a more like virus direction. That seemed like the most obvious thing to start with. But I also threw in some like, here's some of those like ticks and things like that working their way in, and an actual tardigrade. And actually, this is not completely different from what we actually ended up with for the bionanobes. So this whole concept of a sploot with two orbs was in there pretty early, including like the whole idea of them being on a battlefield. Um, so we talked about these. Oh, this is the other thing I have to
Don't
say.
forget, yeah, the emojis. Yeah.
So I almost didn't include this guy because I actually hate this design. This design. I like what we ended up with, but this, the way this guy actually looks, I can't stand it. It looks so cheap. It's basic. It's low effort. I was like, this is just a throwaway sketch that I'm just gonna tack in here to just fill some space. And as soon as I showed you this image, you were like, that one. It's that one. And I was like, of course it is.
Be careful when you, this is true stories from my game development experience too. Be careful what you show any person who's directing anything because they might like it.
So given that, I started developing from, oh, and you picked the gray goo
The gray goo,
on the
yeah.
other side because it just had this kind of interesting globular shape that we thought we could do a lot of things with. And so that turned into this. So over here we have our gray goo derivatives. Um, Mostly playing with like the shapes I can put this goo into. How do I make, flowing goop into a recognizable creature that you see it again later and recognize their face, right? They have to have a face of some kind, or at least some kind of way to emote that is that reads, right? So I went a lot of weird places with this, and I kept on the side here, kept doing a few like particle guys just because that idea wouldn't leave my head. Um, and I really actually liked this one. This
A
guy who's got like this
micromage.
cloak of goop and like
Yeah.
his speech patterns are reflected in his little goop thing that kind of floats down from his head. Um, would have been a real pain for me to animate,
Yeah,
but
and one of the reasons we shied away from this, I guess speaking for my part, is it was too abstract. And if we wanted players to like connect with a recognizable character that had, of course these are aliens, right? But they have some ability to express emotions that you'll be able to get into. It was too I don't know, ivory tower is maybe the wrong word, but that was the way, like, wow, this is an awesome creature. I don't know if this is an alien I'm going to talk to for a while. And that was the challenge for us.
I think this would actually work better as an alien that you don't talk to, like
Yeah.
one that's
Background.
maybe a nefarious and kind of eerie presence. Um, but the nice thing about things that are put down on paper is they stay there until you need them. So
Yep.
anyway, then we developed the emoji plague. My favorite out of all of these is easily this guy, the biblically accurate banana peel. I love that idea so much. I love that name so much. I just wanted that to be it. Um, but I also wanted to kind of work in some of the virus ideas because at this point, these were the bio nanobes, these are the tech nanobes. And at some point, I think while I was doing this drawing, or maybe right after I showed you this drawing, that was when we switched them. Or rather, we
Clarified.
we got on the same track together about which one was which.
Yeah.
And we decided the goopy thing should be bio and the robotic looking thing should be tech, which makes, sense. Oh, and here's our little rock
Yeah.
crab guy. This is where he came from.
Yeah. Remember, if you, just like you said, if you put it down, it never goes away. We'll find use.
So I forget. I don't think we landed on one of these that was like the winner at this point. From either of these categories, actually. These were both like, okay, we like some of these concepts. Let's go back and do some more. So that's sort of the ending of what I consider to be sort of phase one of this. Um, After that, I started working on these guys. So this is me saying, okay, if gray goo is biological, how do I make it look more biological? And the very first thing I thought of was neurons. You can see neurons firing inside this thing. And boom, we landed on Glosif. There he is. Glosif and his amazing Technicolor nucleus. And it's very colorful. It's very emotive. It's got a face. Um, it's fun to look at. And for some reason, this guy still is hanging around, will not leave my head. Um, Maybe we'll find some use for him later. But
It's one of the cavalry. That's clearly part of the effort.
I think after I showed you this picture, you were just like, yep, that's it. Glosif, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Which is good because that's really easy to draw. It's just a blurb. So it's a blorb. It's just
Well, but also like what you're saying is what jumped out immediately is, okay, this is 100% an alien. It is 100% selling the biological aspect, but it's emotive. And there's things going on and they're not human emotions. They're not even maybe emotions the way we can relate to them. But I look at it and you can immediately start feeling things and you can start being worried about it or scared of it or weirded out by it. So that was sort of the power of it. It had like the oh, not diversity, that's the wrong word. It had expressiveness, multidimensionality. If that's a word. I don't know if I just made that up.
it's fun that this reads as a face because it's actually not at all. Like these are two internal nuclei with like a nerve between them that
What's the thing
looks like
where you
two eyes
see
and a mouth.
faces? Yeah, you see faces.
Pareidolia.
Pareidolia, yeah. I think we were just
Yeah.
talking about that.
Um, so yeah, we landed on him, and then this sketch is the one I sent you after that for the tech guys. And we're going with emoji plague, so I just started putting emoji faces on weird robots. And I really liked this guy, Mr. Transistor. I think he's my favorite of these sketches. But there was a lot of like dramatic possibility with this guy because he's like looming over you and he's got like all the legs and it's creepy and he's got the little like hands he can wring. It's just freaky looking. So we went with that one. And then I started drawing them next to each other because I knew they were going to have to be in the same frame together. And that's where we get these guys. I drew a little comic for myself where he gets smacked. Um, whole lot of fun interplay between these two guys, and this is actually where we nailed their final pose because this is what we ended up doing.
Yeah.
Um, this was that idea of them like still looking like they're being seen through an electron microscope. Um, and then this is my tiny, tiny little sketch. You can see individual pixels on this of what we ended up going with. And then after that, we had this guy, my kind of blobby, painty sketch of him.
Yep.
This is
And so at
before
this, sorry, go
I
ahead.
this is before I unpotatoed the bio nanobe and give him his head back because right now he's got no neck.
Yeah, he got a little gumdroppy. Was this and so after you did this, was this when we passed it to Tim to start doing the white boxing?
Yeah. Actually, if I
I don't know
I
if you
have
happen to have that handy. I have it around too, but
um I've already sent you the time lapse. The time lapse should show that should be
it
like the
has it.
first frame
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
It was more just to
Um
talk about like, oh, well, how did we do the getting the camera angle correct and nailing perspective and being able to posture everything just the way we wanted it. And also like, this is a different aspect ratio. This is a fairly wide aspect ratio compared to the ur-quan Masters, which was much more square.
so yeah, we sent I don't remember, I think it was the previous sketch. I think it was one of the this
That
one that we
one,
sent off
yeah.
to Tim. And then he made real fast 3D models of these things and posed them in pretty much the same way. And then the whole point of that, of course, was so everybody can say, actually move this a little bit to the left, and actually let's adjust that slightly and make this bigger or bring this down or whatever, without having to draw it over and over and over again. That was very helpful, especially with this guy who's like a cylinder drawn in perspective with lots of straight lines and lots of curved lines. That would have been a nightmare to draw without a model to reference. But fortunately, we had Tim to do that.
Yeah, and the other cool part, if you can go back to the comic you had with the slap, I know you're a huge fan of the slap. So the other cool part we can do is because we we want to make everything awesome. Everybody wants to do that. But what we get to do by having these sort of incremental approaches, so after the white box, when we had the final sketch and then, or the final paint that you put over that, then we start animating it, then we actually put it in engine, put text on it, figure out where the text goes. All of these things are like a concert coming together with lots and lots of instruments. Then we still have this stuff, right? Where it's been like, oh, mocked up, we could do the slap, we could do more animation. But by actually budgeting ourselves, I know that's nobody likes that word, but by budgeting our time and seeing, oh, how effective is it just to have some of this running, then we get to learn a lot. And, like, how did you did like an interesting trick for Glowsif because the original doodles had like the different colors and everything. So you got extra mileage out of Glowsif just through the colors, right? How did you discover the sort of, hey, I could just recolor this thing and get different moods?
So that idea came to me when I started working with Spine, which is the 2D animation suite that we're using for like combining all of the different assets for these into a single thing, so I can pose them all and then render them out in a way that's usable. And I realized that because I was mapping his body onto a mesh, um, I could just replace that sprite in Spine, and that sprite would still move the same way, so I could reuse the animation, but I could change what its face is doing, because the face is a flipbook animation where it's like actually drawn frames of stuff happening. So I don't have that open here, but I'm sure we can.
I'll edit it in the video. It'll be great. People can see it animating.
Right. Um, yeah, I basically just took that same uh, body that I had already drawn for him and just drew a different shape for the eyes. Like actually, this guy right here is kind of what we ended up going with for one of the emotions, which is the kind of horizontal eyes when he's annoyed with you.
Yeah.
Um, this one looks more like he's trolling you, but we did that one and we got the sort of neutral or happy kind of look, and then we have the one that is incensed. um, and then I
I,
just was able to save those into the same folder and it just automatically put them in the right place, and I just exported the animations again, this time with that different sprite.
yeah, and one of the cool things we can do, because this is an interactive game, is when we have our game script that these characters are reading from, when we go to animate them, we can put cues for that in and say, well, do we want these characters to behave a certain way when they say this phrase or say this other phrase? And, animation ain't cheap, but if we can find cool tricks to get more out of a character, this was one of the first, this was the first one we did fully rigged in the game. And it was cool to kind of have that discovery of like, oh, well, we have these little doodles, but then look, you're coming up with ideas and you have things that can be done. And then we get to talk about, look, we could do all these sophisticated animations, but there's middle ground approaches, and we get to have a conversation about what'll work. Same for the downlooker's face too, right? I mean, I didn't even finish implementing that by the time we did our Kickstarter trailer video, but that was another one where you just had, I think it was that original doodle of the when it was still one of the bio nanobes of the face on the screen, and you just said, "Oh,
Yeah,
I can make a
these
ton of these."
this
Yeah, that
guy.
one. Yes, that one. I think this was both of our favorite emoji face, right? The little screen thing that turned into the downlooker's glass face.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting seeing how all these things, none of which would work individually. Um, we take a little bit from each of them and
Yeah,
we synthesize something that did what we needed it to do.
but you need to see, like you said, the process of this concepting that I find so fun. Not sitting on my side is, you get to see the bits and pieces, but you don't know until you see them. And then when you start merging, you slough off the things that are like, okay, maybe not this, or oh, this is so good, but we have to use it somewhere else. Like the wide phage became a critter, and there's still a few others on this sheet that I'm like, ooh, these are going to be good critters too. I really like the chip frog, by the way. I think I've mentioned that before, but it's cool how we get to still see these things and then learn, okay, this can work, this won't work, this will have these problems. And we try to have a little bit of prescience, but we can really only see like 5 feet in front of us. We don't really know exactly where we're going. We just know the sort of we're honing direction, I guess. That's how it feels on my side of the fence. And then I'll have to, like, when I go to edit this, I'll have to get the full sprite sheet of the downlooker faces up too, because that's like a cool, just to see like, hey, here's how that works. I realize it's not, should be mapped to the sphere and engine. You did it for me. Thank you. Saved me some time.
One of the things I was keeping in mind going into this was definitely like, don't marry yourself to any one of these, right? None of these are the one until one of them is. And like, if I had been like annoyed that we picked the emoji plague, which is the one that I didn't like, then we never would have gotten to the downlooker, which I do like. It's the best out of these designs. It's the one that works the best for what we needed, and it's cute or weird or funny enough like to do what we need it to do for its narrative purpose. And it would have been easy to get kind of bent out of shape around not being able to use that one, that the one that I liked the most. But it's very helpful going into this with the idea that none of these are final until something's final, right?
Yeah.
And we can
Yeah.
always reuse ideas later, like we did with the wide phage became the, what was that thing's name that we gave
Call
it?
it the mineral crab. Oh, what's the actual name we gave it? I forget because there were a lot of good candidates that I actually have to pull it up. This is how busy I am looking at all these different things. I'm like, yeah, what did we call it? We called it Treasure Tromper.
The treasure tromper,
Yeah.
which is a great creature, right?
It
I
works really
love that
well.
idea. Um, just like this thing that like crawls around and runs away from you. You gotta chase it down and shoot the crystals off its head. That's
Yeah.
adorable. And started off as a concept for this guy.
Yeah, and there's other ones in this group, that yeah, these could still have legs, no pun intended, in different places. I think pretty early on, I was obsessed with the infectious Filofax because the idea of that's like spinning would be interesting. And I thought, oh, we could just like rotoscope that kind of like we did with the white box, and just be like, oh, cool, we could get this thing spinning. And I kind of could imagine how that would be. One of the things that I think we also learned doing this is maybe this is maybe I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. This may be one of the hardest ones that we would have to do. And we did so much concepting on it because there are two characters that have to be next to each other and they're very distinct and different. It's not like, the Spaffy High Council where you know what a Spaffy looks like and now you just need a few of them. This scene and this alien had some very particular needs and it was unusual for Argonauts because you never see aliens sitting next to each other.
Can I tell you that when this was the first alien that I got assigned,
Uh-huh.
there was a pretty visceral fear reaction.
Really?
I was terrified of these guys because they're microscopic,
Yeah.
right? I was like, oh, okay. I thought I was going to draw something that would fit in the same room as like, a Vux or a Spathy or even an ur-quan or something like that. I was like, nope, these guys are on a completely different scale, and like some of the write-up for them was like, maybe they're just atoms. And I was like, what? How am I supposed to draw that? Um, we got there, but man, that was the next two that I got after this, the other two that are in the trailer were both just, compared to this, were a huge relief because it was like one of them was like, oh well, I know what that looks like, right?
Yeah.
With the Kazertza, and then the other one, the one that at the end of the trailer, right after the all the like links and URLs and stuff. Watch the end of the trailer, people. There's another alien in there. Um,
I think they caught it, or if they didn't, wow, they're really excited to visit that Kickstarter URL. I'm glad.
well, I want them to see it because I
I
I
do too.
love
I
those
love that.
guys.
I do too.
Um, but those were just conceptually so much more, just easier to dig into because
Yeah.
it's animal. It's in the animal kingdom,
There's a
right?
framework of size and shape you can work with.
I can put eyes on it and not think that that's going to be weird,
Yeah.
right? I can give it things like hair or claws and have those not be something I have to think about. Would a thing at a microscopic scale even benefit from those things? Like, why would it have that?
Well, I remember one of our early, like when we were kind of, I think this was really the first time we were just building something together, this project. So it was a learning experience in every vector. And I remember one of the early things we would talk about, or maybe my, obnoxious thing I would always say all the time is don't worry about how it works, right? I maybe remember that. I'm hoping that wasn't part of the fear response because like you have a natural knack for, well, one, naming things, but two, coming up with rationales for why these things exist and how this makes sense. And it's part of like, well, my opinion, but like it's part of what adds the, whimsy sounds like such a like soft and undervalued word, but I don't mean it that way. It's what adds like a lot of the charm and character and like um vibrant universe or world to the different characters that you've been working on. So like I'm just curious how it is for you as you're trying to create these things when the feedback is, sometimes like don't worry, it doesn't need to make sense, or it's part of a larger framework, which is also, maybe at the first, I don't know if it's the first time you've heard this, but how does it feel taking that thing and not only saying, okay, I'm going to have to know that these things are maybe throwaway and they're going to get discarded, I can't get too attached, but also there's a bigger vision or a bigger field of vision that I don't have right now. And in some cases, I actually have to like ignore certain things that I might want because we're trying to direct them in a certain way. Maybe that was a
So
big question.
I remember that conversation.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's less like me worrying, like, does this make physical sense? Because there was some worry about that at the very beginning, especially with like the guys who look like they're little atoms and waveforms and stuff like that. I was like, I don't know, is this anything? Um, the thing that was more maybe a better word than terrifying would be intimidating. The thing that was a little bit intimidating about that was how do I sell this visually? Like, what tools do I have in my toolbox that say microscopic? And there weren't very many. Like, I hadn't done a lot of artwork of microscopic things. Um, so it was less about like, does it make sense for this creature to have claws, and more like, how do I draw claws microscopically?
Yeah.
And the answer turned out to be look at pictures of tardigrades because those little things have claws and they're creepy. Um, Actually, I think I have
I think
claws on the one in
they're kind
here.
of cute
They're
actually, but
cute,
I
but
don't
like,
know.
look at those hands.
Yeah, those are kind of weird. They're like pug cute?
Yeah, they're so cute that they're so ugly that they're cute.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, pug lovers.
oh, they know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Okay, I mean that makes sense.
so the things I was talking about with like, I can just put an eye on this thing,
Yeah,
right? That's very easy to do when I know exactly, you know, how I'm going to shade it and, how it's going to be lit and all that kind of stuff. But like selling visually, as soon as you look at something, I want you to know that it's microscopic, right?
yeah. You don't have as much to ground yourself, like,
Right.
and say, okay, now I can sell this.
And so trying to turn around and draw something with eyes or claws or whatever at that scope is daunting, but we got there.
We did. Having gone through this process, how do you feel about the end result? Like when you saw, like you were just working on paintings, you didn't see them talk, you didn't see them animate an engine. You only got to just see, what you were working on, your part of it, right? And then how they talk, how they interact, how we even used them in the trailer. How did you feel seeing your creation?
So when I saw the Nanobes animating for the first time, was less of a feeling of, oh, cool, that's how that looks, and more of a feeling of, oh, finally, the thing that's been running around in my brain is finally outside of my brain now. Because when I'm drawing them, I'm seeing that. Like I'm seeing how they're going to animate, I'm seeing how they're going to move. Like all that stuff is just playing over and over again in my head. Um, especially if I'm going to animate them, which in this case I did, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's almost more of a relief to see them on the screen actually animating because it's like, okay, now I have exorcised that from my brain onto the screen, and it doesn't have to take up my very valuable and um, hard to come by bandwidth anymore.
Well, this one was stretching you in a lot of ways. So I'm glad we did the hardest one as a project manager. I'm very glad to know what the absolute hardest thing to do is so that we can measure against it. Really useful measurement. Thank you.
The hardest ones so far.
No, we are not doing anything harder than this. No spoilers for anybody if this is part of the video. But I'm happy if you're happy. Is there anything, unless you had other things I could ask one more sort of softball cheese question, but I don't know if you're in the mood to answer a softball cheese question.
Cheese me.
All right. How does it feel to make an alien for the sequel to the ur-quan Masters?
You remember my reaction when you told me I was going to be drawing the ur-quan?
I was the only one who heard it.
It was so when I'm really excited or terrified or experiencing a strong emotion, um, you can tell because I will not emote at all. My face will just lock down into a mask of perfect stillness. I think it's a defense mechanism. If you ever see me go on a roller coaster, it's the same thing. I'll just the whole time everybody else is screaming, waving their arms around. I'm just
You learned it from the
per
Ootwig.
perfectly rigid, like no bending. Everybody else is like swaying back and forth. I'm just the whole time, even if I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
So that was my reaction to finding out I was going to draw the ur-quan. And it's kind of been a background slow burn feeling also for the rest of this entire project so far. Um, not only for the aliens we've done, but some things that I know that are coming in the future that I get to know about for now and other people get to find out about later that were my idea, and I'm very excited about that. So, like the day the trailer dropped, I of course was sending it to all of my friends and family. Like, this is what I've been working on secretly for the past like 6 months that I haven't been able to talk to you about, and now I can finally show you some stuff. And I got a lot of reactions that were like, "Oh, that's so cool! You got to draw that thing, and like put it in the game and all that stuff." And I was like, "You don't understand. It's not just that I drew this thing; I made this thing. Like, the writing team came up with a lot of it, and Paul came up with a lot of it. But when it came to how these things look, it was me. I made it, and that is a really cool feeling. The idea that this thing did not have a physical form until I gave it one. And like from the very first concept sketch to the actual animation that is going to be in the game, I drew all of that. I made the thing. It's like it almost feels like a
Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein.
kind of like in
Yeah.
a really cliche way. It kind of feels like a parental relationship like that, where it's like
Oh, yeah.
I created this thing. It is, and I've set it free into the world, and I now have no control over where it goes from here. But I made it.
That's awesome. And I really like that last part too, because we've worked on many games and I don't, art is up to what people want to make of it, the stories they want to tell about it and things like that. And, we can, we, I, will- I, al- I've, I think I've shared this story before, but I just have to at least tell you so that you know it, which is, uh, on Skylanders, I only designed everybody talks to me when I talk about Skylanders about the characters, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, I didn't work on characters. But if you saw some UI or you played with the portal, that was my work. So it's very, one of the sad parts of transitioning from art to design and engineering is nobody sees anything I do, but that's fine because I get to work with artists like you who do way better stuff than I would ever do. And then I get to make it shine. So it's much more fun for me that way. But there was one character in the original Skylanders that I was responsible for not the visual design of, but the gameplay design of. And the part that makes me laugh is it was just statistically of the 32 characters, the least popular, the least liked character in the entire game. And I was like, that's why you don't let me do it. So I'm sorry I made that character notes. Another designer took over it. And also I think the visuals are what turned people off. But I'm glad you get to make things that people are going to see and love and be inspired by it, because I it's a different level of agony for the rest of us to have to not share this for a while, but I can only imagine for you that keeping this secret is hard.
Um, I actually had um a little bit of that what's that called where you psychological phenomenon where you are more capable than you believe yourself to be. Imposter
Imposter
syndrome.
syndrome.
I had a little bit of imposter syndrome going in, and there was definitely a few nights that I had trouble falling asleep because I was like, am I going to be the person who draws something that makes everybody hate this game?
We call that
And
accountability. No.
well, I mean, that was somehow divorced from the other thing I was thinking and feeling the whole time, which was this is the thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to not pull any punches or phone it in or do the low effort version of these things, which is why I was nervous about the emoji plague. Um, because I wanted to put everything into this, right? This is well, not a lot of people get this kind of opportunity to work on something that is like this important to them. And so I wanted to really give it my all. Um, and people are going to have their opinions. Everybody's going to like some things and dislike other things, and you have no way of controlling for that at all. Um, but after the trailer dropped, at least one person on the Discord said, my favorite part of this is the alien conversations. And I want that person to know that that meant a lot to me because it only takes one.
We'll,
That was
we'll,
one
we'll keep
person's favorite part.
we will keep this for video. It's funny. I look for that sort of stuff too, and
And
it's my job to find the criticism. Sorry, go ahead.
then I stopped reading. As soon as I saw
Oh,
that, I was like, cool,
I got what I
close the
needed.
window.
That's smart. That's smart. Um, yeah, I mean, I do remember talking pretty early on, and I think I said something to you along the lines of, I look, we've all been there. I appreciate that everybody's got imposter syndrome. The problem is people who are really capable have it the worst because they've been building that up, and only through years and years of just doing stuff, you sort of get the mindset that, you know what, just what you said about not getting attached to the unfinished things actually becomes part of the finished things. And not to turn this into something about production, we'll have another thing about that. But when you realize, hey, I just need to do stuff and iterate. I know we talked a lot about that early on, and iterate and get it in front of people and see how people react. And yes, I reacted to the one you hated, but look at where it got us. And so the idea is, if you get in your own head and you just like are using that as your only compass and you can't get the feedback from the world, that can be just catastrophic. It's like, where's your where's your measuring stick for how you're doing? But I do remember early on mentioning to you, like, because well, you're a big fan of ur-quan Masters. It means a lot to you, and it's awesome to have you here contributing to Children Infinity. But I remember telling you something along the lines of like, do you realize that at some point someone's going to be making fan art of your work? And that's like, I don't know. I think I maybe scared you with that, but but this is real. It's sort of like, how do you know you've made it as a musician? It's like, well, I don't know. Is it when you put out an album? Is it when you record a song? Is it when you can play a perfect chord on a guitar? Or like, it never ends. But the exciting part for me working with you just is you get to be on this journey now, and look how much more real it gets every day. Now there's a real trailer. It's not just a trailer, by the way. There's a real game. It's going to be a real game. It's going to have a real release date. It only goes on and on, but you kind of have to live that. So anyway, that wasn't a question. That was just me being pithy.
I am kind of looking forward to that happening the first time. I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't either, but I
And
think people need more context.
I've always had this idea in my head that I really want to see what a real alien would look like when it actually exists in the real world, right? I'm going
Ooh,
somewhere with this.
okay.
Um, and I like fictional depictions of aliens, right? They're interesting and fun, and they are useful for telling a good story, and I love everything about that. But there's something about the idea of seeing an actual alien. Like, what would that really look like? Because nobody's ever seen it, as far as I know. Um, and seeing that for the first time would have to change your worldview forever. Because
Yeah.
then you would finally know that's what an actual creature from another planet looks like, right? And that's how I feel about the idea of someone doing fan art of my work. Like, it's interesting. I like the idea of it, but I feel like I would need to actually see it
Right. What is
um,
that
for
going to be?
for me to have any concept of what that would even look like, because I cannot conjure an image in my head of what it would look like for somebody to do fan art of my work. It's a weird, complete blind spot for me. So I
Yeah.
look forward to having that third eye opened.
Well, I look forward to finding someone who will do it. Well, we can tie this off. Thank you so much for chatting and walking us through all this creative process. If people, I love this. If people like this, we can do more. I don't want to eat up all your time. I know you've got lots and lots of aliens to do. Um, and I don't want to put you on the spot all the time, but this is really fun.
I do think that the most recent thing I worked on, that I did record a time lapse for. I did
Ooh.
do it. Um,
They'll see that on the Kickstarter by the time we're having this conversation. So you don't have to be too coy.
um, but I think that is possibly an image people would like to hear us talk about, just because
Okay.
it's got a lot of familiar stuff in it, but it's also got a lot of unfamiliar stuff in it, and they're kind of combined into one spot and be a fun place to talk about some aliens.
Yeah, I'm down. All right. Well, thank you for talking about our mysterious nanobes that people are still going to get to learn about.